Mayor Godus,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Here.
Counselor Hershey,
Here.
Counselor Kaup,
Here.
Counselor Dem,
Here.
Counselor Stepp,
Here.
Counselor Wusso.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Before we do the pledge of allegiance, can I make a motion to allow? Can I make a motion to allow Councilman Dem to appear from Switzerland and participate in this meeting?
You may. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed.
He's opposed. That's my joke, Marco.
Your neighbors in Switzerland better hear you say the pledge, Marco.
Yes, for Swiss national anthem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, is there any agenda changes or conflicts of interest this evening?
I'd like to remove.
Charlie. Everything.
I would like to remove item, hang on, I had it a second ago, 7A, because there's been some changes so that the public knows what those changes are.
That was,
That you as well?
that was consent agenda, the first item on consent.
Okay. Okay, any other?
Moving it to, promoted for the consent agenda. Thank you.
And putting it on regular.
Are there any other agenda changes or conflicts of interest? Okay, seeing none. Citizens appearing before council. This is for items not on the agenda this evening. Please step forward and give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Cheryl Cave. I live at 1801 Grand Avenue. I'm 74 years old. I've lived there 30 years. I've had a great relationship with VIP Trash that you're working very hard, and at least in my case, have put out of business. At 74 on a very limited income, it's not expandable. I get to go from $57 a quarter to either 108 or 156 to do business with the last 2 that are left, which I'm also understanding that you're trying to put them out of business as well. I'm frustrated that this council doesn't speak too often for citizens, for the citizens' well-being, for the well-being of Glenwood Springs, and this is just one example. You're gonna of many. If you're gonna target businesses and community events to get rid of them, there should be a little more citizen involvement, comment, and information for them. I found out last Tuesday, when my trash was going to be picked up, that it was the last time I get my trash picked up. So that's the information that I got in a timely manner. There's so many things to be worked on here in Glenwood Springs, problems that are real, and this is a made-up problem with a solution that was never necessary. It was nice to be able to call Jackie. She picked up the phone. Waste management, I was on the phone 2 different times for 45 minutes. And then told that I get to pay $108 a quarter. So we had good service, we had reliable service, we had good communication at a reasonable price. So of course that would be a targeted business that's out of business or going to be out of business because of the actions of the council. Again, money was wasted on hiring another consultant to give you the answer that you wanted. I was told that this consultant already took down the businesses that were providing trash service in Carbondale. So you hired them to give that report here. I'm really angry, frustrated, sick of what's happening in Glenwood Springs and all the things that we're losing when the citizens are not involved in the process of making decisions, and the representatives here on the council feel like they're kings and queens.
Thank you,
rather than
Cheryl.
Representatives of the citizens.
Thank you.
I have a question. I have a question.
For-
For Cheryl.
Oh, okay.
Cheryl, I get VIP trash service and Cheryl, Paula Steph here.
Cheryl, Paula has a question.
Hello.
What?
I have a
Paula has
question.
Question.
I have a question for you. I get VIP trash service and I wasn't told it was discontinued. Is that something you got in the mail?
Fortunately, there's a few areas that they haven't closed down service yet. Call Jackie, she'll pick up the phone like in 5 seconds,
Okay.
not.
Okay.
45
Okay,
minutes.
Cheryl.
Okay.
We can hear you. We're able, we don't need to be yelled at.
I'll check on that. Thanks.
Well,
I
I
hadn't
don't
heard
hear
that.
you when you're communicating with the community because that doesn't happen.
Thank you. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I want to address the issue to Cheryl and to others. So we met at a work session last week, which was a public meeting and was announced public meeting and talked about the possibility, not the probability, but the possibility of consolidating trash service for a number of reasons, including wear and tear on the streets, trucks consistently in the neighborhoods and things like that. There has been no decision made on that yet. That is not something that that's just something we're looking at and considering. There will be public meetings before any changes are made, number one. Number two is for people who do not use a whole lot of trash, there's going to be some fairly inexpensive options available, smaller trash cans.
No, there's not available.
All right, guys, we're not going to do this. Excuse me, Charlie. Charlie, everybody, we're not going to go back and forth with the public right now. We have council comments at the end. So if there's something you want to say to finish up, Charlie, that'd be great. But we just don't need to have a
No,
back.
wasn't trying to engage. I'm trying to let people know that we are looking at this. There will be, if it comes about and is approved, there's going to be less expensive options that currently exist.
Thank you. Any other comments for items not appearing on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion for the consent agenda minus item A, council minutes.
So moved.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Can we address that minutes thing first? Or
Yes. Let's take as our first order of business, the council minutes. Go ahead. Charlie / Shelley.
There was a question in some of the wording of the minutes pertaining to the motion that was made on the adoption of the hotel regulations, the changes for those for extended stay hotels. So that wording was clarified in the minutes based on the video recording, and Attorney Carl Hanyon had made some clarifications when the motion was made and amended. So that's been cleaned up.
Yeah, so the minutes that you might have read in the agenda packet are not the same ones that we're going to approve.
Right.
Okay. With that, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes as amended by the city clerk.
Second.
Been moved by Shelley, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Just for the public, Marco Dem is joining us via video link. So if you see a thumbs up or thumbs down, that's sometimes the delay in.
Can I ask a question? We're gonna have a vote, I assume, on a couple of issues tonight. Is he gonna just?
We'll do a voice vote.
I think as long as he's in the meeting, I think we'll just do a roll call vote or voice votes if it doesn't
Well, then
require.
I could have sat over
Oh,
there.
Well, no, but there may
Sorry
be a
about that.
point at which we move off. He may only stay for that first housing item because of the late hour.
Okay,
And at that point, then we would be using the.
and after that, we're
regular
done.
system. Right. Well, there's some-
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So onto our regular agenda, item number 11, affordable, I'm
10.
sorry, 10.
I would move to continue item number 10 until the next meeting
Second,
in August.
second.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Tony. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Just for the public's benefit, that was an ordinance updating floodplain regulations that is still being worked through at the staff level.
It's being tweaked, right?
It's being tweaked, right? I just didn't want, it's kind of a generic.
Not that
thing,
we don't care about flip.
Right.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay, on to our regular first item is, the next item is affordable workforce housing ballot decision. This was continued a motion for council to put on the November ballot a 3.5% additional lodging tax. It was made by Tony, seconded by me. I guess I'll just
At what rate was that?
3.5%.
I thought I said 2.5.
No,
You
you said
said
3.5.
3.5, but if you would like to withdraw,
I'll withdraw my motion.
Now we'll try my second then.
Perfect.
Okay.
Problem solved.
So what's the will of council on how to proceed next? Do we want to take another motion? Do we want to, how do we want to proceed procedurally?
I want to mention that the ad hoc committee sent us all via email their recommendation and their request, because ultimately at every juncture along here, we had asked the community and the community formed a group that made a recommendation to us on both the concern, they educated us about the problem, and then ultimately they gave us a recommendation. And so I think that it's really important for the community to know that that is out there and that it came from that group. And that the recommendation is that a 2.5% tax question that would be appropriated towards affordable housing solutions in the community.
Okay.
I have a question
Yeah, go ahead.
on that. Was that, so that recommendation did not make it into the packet? Is that correct? How does that, how do we make it public?
well, I mean, I guess I would ask if they were willing to stand up and just make that recommendation to you tonight. I think that might be
Okay,
the most
thank you.
efficient way to get it in the record.
Summarize it?
Prepared to do that.
Okay. that
Yeah,
would
does a
be one.
representative from the group want to come up and speak about that recommendation?
Yeah, we got a couple of them.
Well, I thought we were not going to take public comment. If he's just going to give a recommendation, we don't need more than one person. do we?
It's up to council. What do you guys want to do?
I would like to hear from the public, as I believe we have a lot of people here. If anybody wants to speak, I would like to hear from people.
I would like to front end it though with the ad hoc housing commission having an opportunity to speak first.
Without them as a presenter to this issue. Not as a public comment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just point of order. I've heard, and I like Clark, but I've heard this presentation now 3 times at a work session and at 2 meetings. I think I know where that their position is. If they just want to summarize quickly their position and the recommendation, I don't think it needs to be a 20-minute presentation.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I think is
We have just the recommendation and a couple, like a summary of conclusions that you guys have.
Perfect. Come on up.
I think that's important for the public who may not have heard it before.
And is there a place for Miss Wild to sit? Because I feel bad.
Good evening, council. 7 months ago, there was a call to action by the council for this coalition to explore new revenue generated from a new tax for workforce housing. And we were charged to make those recommendations. Today, we celebrate one of those most diverse citizens and businesses who work tirelessly to
Let me stop
answer
you
the
just for a
call.
second. Sorry, I think we all missed it in the third part, right? You need to give your name.
Oh,
before you
yes.
start.
And where you
Dr. Norma-
live.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Dr. Norma Guzman Duran.
And where do you
I call
live?
her- I live here in Glenwood.
I know your address.
Your address. My address, 100 Virginia Road. Now, everybody and their mama knows.
When I'm gonna come
Today,
visit.
may I proceed?
Yes.
I guess you can, yeah.
Thank you, Tony. I
Good.
appreciate it. Today, we celebrate one of the most diverse citizens and businesses who work tirelessly to answer the call to begin finding a solution for equitable workforce housing. As a point of celebration, this coalition unanimously derived a solution, unprecedented. Mayor and council, we know that you recognize the work. We trust that this broad representation of this coalition signifies with your support, the most probable practical, and passable housing funding option. Your unanimous support reciprocating your unanimous support is confirmation of your willingness to move forward, helping Glenwood attain more workforce housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Dr.
just so you
Nolan.
know, everyone has to state their name and their address. Thought that was inappropriate. Don't do it again.
Okay. So, I recognize your interest in keeping going with things. And, you know, this is we're excited as a group to be able to present this. We started as a coalition. We expanded the coalition for some of your all's recommendations, brought in more of the business community, and we're finishing as a coalition. So we've stayed together and reached a unanimous vote. I want to ask Sumner is going to come up unless you want me to do this. All right, come on, everyone. Sumner's going to share the specific recommendation for the group.
Thank you. Sumner Schachter, 1204 Blake, Glenwood Springs. I think Ingrid outlined it, but specifically, we are recommending that you place on this November's ballot an option to increase the lodging tax, which includes hotels as well as short-term rentals by 2.5%, an additional 2.5% that will be used for workforce housing. Opportunities in Glenwood Springs. You can see there, we believe that's a quick summary of the benefits that we believe, even though we've modified our amount, we believe the amount of things that can be done and the leverage is huge in terms of our community and our competitiveness with other communities. It'll be levied on all accommodations, as we said. It must be used to expand the workforce housing, and the funds are to be isolated and segregated, not to be moved for other purposes. And it will sunset in 20 years. So that's what we're hoping for. That's what we're asking for. The coalition has worked many, many hours, and we unanimously agreed to this. In addition to that, we have felt as a coalition that even though it's unusual to come to council with this, from the coalition's point of view, it's not an either or. We came to you once with sources and uses and options. You said, come back with a specific recommendation. We have labored hard with the community to do so. So it's our unanimous feeling is this is a recommendation. Should council not support it, higher, lower, otherwise, we feel like we're not in a position where we'll be able to support a campaign. And that was also a unanimous decision by the coalition. So we appreciate your concern, and we definitely appreciate the opportunity we've had to work on behalf of the city. Thank you.
I want to briefly summarize for people who didn't get to see the packet, because we needed to have our sort of final meeting prior. That's why it wasn't in the packet, to make some of those final decisions. So in the interest of just sharing with the public, oh, and this is Clark Anderson, 1502 Midland Avenue, working with the coalition. These are the conclusions that recommendation was based on. We know that affordable housing, affordable workforce housing in Glenwood Springs is a critical challenge facing our community. Our coalition believes it's the #1 economic challenge facing our community. We believe dedicated funding is a very reliable and effective tool. The communities that have these funds get results, they leverage and attract resources, and the impact can be seen over time. It's very clear in the places that have these funds that they're able to get more resources and they're able to get projects done, and you do so creatively. A 2.5% increase in the lodging tax is a practical way to take this problem on. It will create the resources and capacity we need. And it's a rate that also keeps our tax rates competitive. A 5% lodging tax increase lodging tax is not uncommon. In fact, when we looked at 22 different comparison communities, over half of them had a rate between 4 and 6, and over a third had 5% or higher. Look, we also recognize where we are as a community, and we recognize that we need solutions that meet and fit Glenwood Springs as it is today. Glenwood is going to grow. We're going to see new development, and this tool does give us opportunities to be more proactive in shaping future development when it comes, so that we can expand affordability. And the way that you do that is through filling gaps in financing and public-private partnerships. So this is not funding that would be used to just go out and acquire a home and call it affordable and walk away. We wouldn't get very far. This is all about leverage and attracting resources. And that's how you get many, many times more impact per dollar than you would otherwise. But we also recognize that in Glenwood, we have limitations and constraints on the development that's available. And that's why the strategies that we've identified and presented to you include several development neutral opportunities, which are things like motel conversions and ADU incentives and other types of strategies that make it possible to add workforce housing to our affordable, to our housing stock, while not necessarily having all of that have to happen through development. And so that allows us to tackle this problem, even in ways that we're not actually growing as a community. So we know it's going to be both parts of that. So we think it's really important to recognize that there is a time is of the essence, and there are things we can do right now. There are opportunities right in front of us. Just in the last meeting, you guys had a lot of conversation around the opportunity of motel conversions. If we just look back the last 10 years of development, had we had these funds, it's incredible to think of what we could have done to shape those projects to be more affordable than they are today, which is something we hear so much frustration from in the community. So we think now is the time. Every year that we wait, this problem is going to get more expensive. There's never going to be an easy year to try to go and pass something like this. But we believe that with the momentum in this coalition and your all's interest and support, we can do this. We think the community needs something where this council comes together with the confidence and support to move forward. So we're ready to see that from you guys. And I want to just finish us up here. We were interested, but we want to know if this is okay with you guys to just sort of help walk through what would be possible with this level of funding. Go ahead. There you are. I was trying to see.
Carolyn Meadowcroft. My address is 659 Dolores Circle in Glenwood Springs. So we took a little bit of time to kind of analyze what could be done with money that could be generated from this tax that we're talking about. So we wanted to look at what is possible that could be done with this money. And we kind of did a little scenario here, and that is based on 1.35 million that could be obtained through a tax in 1 year's time. So what we did is we kind of isolated some money into some different buckets that could have some far-reaching aspects to it. We looked at 335,000 as incentives and buy downs that could be used for funding ADUs, could help 10 people. Looking at another 70,000 for buy down to deed restriction, good deed program. There's a lot of things that are available out there, and even put some funds toward the motel conversions that we have seen, or probably see more of. Another 500,000 designate for ownership housing, and that could fund the gap in construction for 5, maybe more homes. That's at least 20 people in a year's time. 375 for workforce rental. That would provide gap funding of up to 5% for, in a neighborhood of 20 unit workforce rental projects. That's 45 people in a year's time. And then 200,000 that could be used for down payment assistance funds. There's already programs out there that could use this funding to get out to people on a basis of kind of works out 3% of a loan amount, which roughly is 12,000 per loan. That could help 16 homes and another 64 people. So we're talking a number of about 150 people, adults and children, that could benefit from this money just in 1 year's time.
Of course, that's just one scenario, but we wanted to sort of explore what would be possible with these funds. There's a lot of different ways that these funds could be deployed. We just want to wrap up by reminding everybody what's really on the table here. This is about our community. It's about also, in a very real way, our economy and being able to maintain a workforce that is resilient and we can actually sustain here. It's about having healthy local businesses, making sure our families can stay in Glenwood and they have stability. It's really about expanding housing opportunities. So a range of opportunities in housing for different needs, and especially for entirely for our workforce. This is an opportunity to get really creative in the way that we fill that financing gap that we've talked to you guys about in creating affordable workforce housing. This is a way to leverage and attract resources. I mean, this is we are going to get so much more money in than a dollar for dollar way than we're committing here as a community. It's going to create long-term assets that are going to stay in our community. These aren't dollars that are going to go away when people go away, because we're going to create long-term affordability in our community. And at the end of the day, I think for a lot of us, this is about what do we do to sustain a real community in Glenwood Springs. We've seen this book play out. We know what happens. And so we want to do that. Thank you all for the time. We tried to be a little fast and rush through this, but we wanted to summarize our work, and we'd love to see you guys vote entirely unanimously in favor of this. It would mean a lot for us. It would also mean a lot for the community. I've heard different people on this council talk about, you guys, when we came before you guys last time, you said, you guys need to carry this. Not everybody in this community trusts us right now. Well, I think you guys should have the confidence to carry this forward together, and you guys don't have to agree on everything, but I think you all know and agree that housing is a really challenging problem we have. And it would be very inspiring, I think, for our community to see you guys unite around this and give our community the chance to make the decision. At the end of the day, all we're doing and all you're voting in favor of is saying, yep, let's give the community the chance to decide if this makes sense. That's all we're asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, ad hoc committee, for, who'd I say?
But let's thank Marco for coming in from
You know what?
freaking Europe today. I mean,
Thank
Really?
you, Marco.
thank you.
And Marco, thank you for all the hard work on the ad hoc committee. No, Clark, I'm just gonna say Clark, because there's so many of you out here that I will just trip over myself thanking everybody, but your contributions, the time you've spent, the work you put in have been just nothing short of fantastic. It's probably the most diverse, inclusive group that I've seen on 5.5 years on council. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for all that work. So. With that, what are folks' thoughts on taking public comment? Okay. Okay. Who's first?
How are you gonna go in order? Oh, you have a list.
Only
Yeah,
one person.
On the list? No,
Oh.
there's more people.
So
all the time.
just in preface, if you could really take care not to repeat something other people have said, if we're all listening very intently. So if you start off, I agree with everything that person said, and then repeat it the exact same way. You sure can. I'm not going to stop you. But I think, yes, sir.
There's also some people online. You won't
Yeah.
forget that.
So I see 3 people online. So yes, so please step forward, give your name, address. I'm sorry, what?
There is one person there.
They said we went.
Yes. So Katie, gosh, you're my neighbor. Langenzingen. Not even close. Not even close.
Hi, I'm Katie Langenisen. I live in Glenwood Springs, 1107 Parkwood Lane. By the way, I think that's a ridiculous thing. You have to state your address. We'll talk about that another time. I'm here to represent myself, but also a group called Mountain Voices Project, which I think you guys have become familiar with, but for the public, it's a group of more than 25 institutions in this region. A lot of them are here tonight. So maybe if you guys want to raise your hands as I say it, but Roaring Fork Schools, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, including Pastor Jeff himself, St. Stephen's, including Father Bert himself, and many others like Valley Settlement, English in Action, CMC, and others. In the fall, you guys considered putting this on the ballot. The community very loudly asked you to do a process and not rush it. A lot of people on the ad hoc committee, as they just spoke, have given their time. And we really want to support the work that they've done and the hard negotiating they've done to get to this spot. And we support their recommendation. And we really hope you'll respect that and follow that. And the last quick thing I'll just have is how many people in this room, not just from our group, but are here in support of the recommendation for housing tonight? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie.
Mr. Person.
Yes, Mr. Parsons, and just real quick before we start your timer, the reason we just made aware that it's actually in our code that you're required to state your address. I think
Thank
that's something
you.
we're definitely going to look at. in the very, very near future. So with that being our code, name and address, Mr. Parsons.
Not a problem. I'm Zach Parsons, 2202 Bennett Avenue. One of the things that strikes me about where we're at here tonight is that I tried to talk to a number of you on council just privately, and a lot of the decisions have already been made, is what I've heard. Basically, that our minds are made up. And then I hear in this room a lot of people in favor of the recommendation. But if you look at the Post Independent, there's not a single article out there right now that says what that recommendation is. If you're a member of the general public, this is the first time tonight you're hearing what the 2.5 recommendation is. So I think it'd be appropriate to actually sort of pause for a moment, to think about what the recommendation is, and to tie it to the actual asks or the actual needs of the community. I know that we're sort of what I've been told is that there's going to be a vote tonight, and then later we'll figure out how exactly we're going to spend the money. But the citizens want to know how you're going to spend the money before they make a decision. And so, you know, the idea is that if those discussions can happen now, if they can happen now before you're putting this on the ballot, when the people actually have a chance to hear, oh, that's what the recommendation is, when they can read that paper that Clark put together and this team put together, that seems like the time to have a vote, not the day, basically, or the day after it comes out. And so, you know, on one hand, I really think that that's part of, you know, the council just sort of just taking, you know, input into account. And then on the other hand, the other thing that I saw just tonight on that language in terms of the recommendation was that it says workforce housing, but it doesn't say Glenwood Springs workforce housing. And I think that that's something that you should address tonight as well. Finally, the last thing that I'll bring up is this, is that during the winter, a number of individuals utilize the hotels in our area as workforce housing when the prices are lower and they're not the summer rates. The question I guess I have is, you know, how many people are we affecting by increasing their rent? Let's say if it's $100 a month or $100 a day in terms of your what you're paying, and you got 30 days a month, that's $75 you're going to be paying extra. And if you are really in need of affordable housing, that's quite a bit of money. So the question is, are we displacing those individuals at the expense of the 140 individuals we just saw on the screen? And is that a trade-off that we're willing to make? And I think that that's a discussion worth having. And I really wish that we could continue this conversation. And I appreciate you at least taking public comment tonight. A lot of people are really just now starting to hear about this because they don't hear about it until the paper prints it. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach.
Nice question before we go on. Carl.
Yes.
Carl, can you explain for Zach and the other people, what if we vote to approve?
Charlie, could you?
Oh, thank you. If we vote to approve putting something on the ballot, what will be the process from this point forward, from tonight forward?
Sure thing, Charlie. So really what we need tonight is a vote so that I know what I'm drafting to bring back to you for final approval in terms of ballot language. That language would likely be approved at either the second meeting in August or first meeting in September. I'm going to guess first meeting in September. We've got a lot of work on the August 18th agenda. And that would be the final language. And so hopefully between now and then, in particular, the paper would write an article about it. I know it is particularly difficult as we've seen a number of reporters leave for a variety of reasons, not ironically, the least of which is cost of living. They don't have housing. I know. So from that standpoint, there are going to be some more opportunities to sort of comment on specific ballot language. But I think from my standpoint, the certainty of knowing what I am drafting to is critically important.
Just one other question tied to that. I know we pass a resolution, I think, for the question. Don't we also pass an ordinance that directs the funding?
Yeah, it does. Typically what I try to do and will endeavor to do is to have for first reading at the same time as that resolution and enabling ordinance for you guys to look at. And by enabling, I mean, how do we implement that tax measure? If you'll recall, I think a great way to think about it is like our A&I fund, right? Which has done things like trails and a lot of the major infrastructure projects and things like that. Those ballot questions did not say, this is the specific project and how much it's going to cost that we're going to accomplish. It identified several key areas that were important to the community. That was what was in the ballot question. The enabling language tightens that up a little bit, makes sure that we're creating a separate fund, that we're directing those funds to those uses. But obviously, with any of these questions, you don't know the final dollar numbers of what this project is or that. And a great example would be the 8th Street extension or South Midland. Some of the trail work that's been done over the years. All of those things were identified as project areas, but not specifically, this is the section of trail that this funding is going to.
Thank you for your time.
I too had a point of clarification just from one of Zach's comments. He mentioned that if someone is using this type of housing, say a motel room in West Glenwood or South Grand, if they're using it for long-term housing and they're paying an additional tax, you mentioned something earlier this evening just on land use and what those are allowed. Yeah. Thank you.
So I mean, really, they're paying a day rate, and
Mhm.
so the tax would apply.
Mhm.
If the day rate is $100 a day, then that's would be an additional $2.50 on that day rate. Obviously, those hotels can't lease for months at a time because that would be a violation of the land use code. They are permitted as short-term lodging, and that's why they're paying the tax. That, in fact, is one of the big reasons why Jen and her team fast-tracked the regulations on hotel conversions that you guys saw, and those came through very quickly, both Planning Commission and you guys trying to create those opportunities, try to address that piece of the puzzle for sure.
So anybody who has converted this doesn't apply. This is for
No.
short term. This will be used primarily, or the money acquired through this will be from tourism.
It will be from anybody who is renting a room one day at a time. And like I said, we're trying to create that mechanism whereby hotels, if they want to, can convert over to long-term rentals with a minimum of, minimizing the process and sort of minimizing the amount of work they have to do to get there. But it's anybody who's paying the day rate, which is primarily in the community tourism.
Further comment? All right, see none, I'll bring,
Mr. Gould.
okay, well, you didn't jump up with the vigor that I expected of, oh, thank you.
Mark Gould, 200 Oak Lane, Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Glenwood Springs has a workforce housing crisis. Not a problem, but a crisis, which is only going to get worse. Who's being affected by this crisis? The nurses, the school teachers, the police and fire, your water, sewer, and electric department employees that take care and make sure that everything is working. I added in for Councilman Hershey, we also have a crisis for our judicial workforce, right? They're part of the process. And on top of this, we have a crisis with local business workforce. Okay, and so whether that's our hotels or whether that's our restaurants, people should be able to live in the community where they're working. Okay, so what caused this problem? Well, and I don't have Glenwood's data only because I got busy today and didn't get it done. But in May of this year, the average house in Colorado is $604,000. Okay, so what are our headwinds? What's going on out there? We've got mortgage rates that are up 200 basis points. We have 2/4 of gross domestic product that are down. We have inflation above 9%. We have increased gas prices that are causing us not to be able to travel as much as we otherwise would like to. And the average family has less disposable income on a monthly basis than they used to. Those are our problems, right? So the committee spent many hours determining the best course of action. Am I out of time?
Nope.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's something I got. So the committee spent time making sure that they could come up with a recommendation to council that could get passed by this city it's not the easiest thing in the world to come up with a group to where the business community will support you and the workforce will support you and the retirees that live here will support you. But they came up with a recommendation that we believe can get passed. Okay, this group of people that you've assembled are willing to basically charge the machine gun nest and get this passed in November. They're committed to this. What they're asking of you is, would you please unanimously support the recommendation that they've worked so hard and spent so much time on? And I would tell you that the employees of Glenwood Springs will appreciate it. And I'm not asking you to endorse it. I'm asking you to put it on the ballot and let the voters decide. You ask them to give you a recommendation. They've given you a recommendation that's reasonable. I know everybody doesn't love it. I got it. Everybody doesn't love it,
Mark,
right? Sorry.
it's okay.
Apologize.
No.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, it's,
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Is there anyone online?
there is, but go ahead.
I'm
You're on your way up. It's fine. No, the next,
To raise my hand.
you know, I usually just come up, but we do have two people online. No, it's okay. You're up here.
Hi, my name is Kendall Riley. I live at 621 South Second Street, apartment N in Carbondale. But I taught fifth grade for a number of years in Glenwood, including to a certain redhead. And I'm not speaking as an employee of the school district right now, but in 2016, the voters passed a bond for $5 million per community for affordable housing for us. And this is to address Zach's point about the timeline of this. We didn't really have a full plan. And I was part of the group that got to do the really messy, really complicated, and really interesting work of figuring out how we were going to use that money and what it was going to look like. And if we hadn't passed that, school wouldn't be starting in 2 weeks. We would not be able to open our doors right now. But it's not like teachers are an easy sell. People tend to like us. We're helpful. We keep your kids somewhere that's not on the streets. But it's not just about housing teachers. It's about waitresses. It's about I mean, I could go on. But I urge you to pass this and then figure out all the messy part, because it's messy. But making that work has been some of the most interesting work I've done in my life, and I hang out with 10-year-olds. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now go online to, I believe, Wolney. Well, it could be your husband.
I bet you it's mom. And Todd too. That could be Lakey.
Alyssa, me.
Did she have to put them on the main screen?
Council, can you hear me?
Yes.
Monica Wolney at 51871 Highway 6 in Glenwood Springs. I'd like to point out that council is elected by the people and to govern and speak for the people of Glenwood Springs. And as some of you do just that, sadly, some of you forgot what your place is. I understand that everyone has their own opinion and thoughts on certain topics, but as council members who are appointed to echo what the community is either asking for, wanting, or not wanting, for a long time now, it shows that some council members either don't care, don't show, or really don't listen to what's going on in the community. Instead, they have their own opinion and they're pushing their own agenda and sometimes trying to pass things just to pass things because it's an easier pass. I don't believe that this is the right time to push something like this on small business. I think this will not only affect the hotel business, but it will affect every business, every small business in Glenwood Springs. There's no plan on where this money is going to be spent. According to the ordinance and the resolution of the accommodation tax, which states that it should be going towards marketing and events in Glenwood, in which we know that that money has not gone towards many events. I don't know how you plan on putting that money towards affordable housing unless you're going to plan on changing the ordinance. Also, not everyone can live in Glenwood, just like not everyone can live in Aspen. Not everyone can live in Carbondale. There's many of us that live in, work in Aspen, and we don't live in Aspen. We live down Valley, just like people work in Glenwood and they live in Rifle. People commute on a daily basis, and it's not only in our city. People commute to Denver and they live on the outskirts of Parker. You can't fit everybody in a small town when you already have a problem with the streets, the potholes, and everything else, and there's no money towards any of that. So I just want to know how you guys are going to fix the infrastructure and the streets, or are you guys going to be pushing another tax on us come next year in 2004? And right now, this is what you're going to put more people in. It doesn't make sense at the time right now. People can commute. There's already too much people in Glenwood Springs that are basically living in Glenwood Springs. Our roads are congested. I just don't understand what the thoughts are on this. Also, the fact is that,
Monica, your time is up.
okay.
Thank
Sorry.
you. No, it's okay. Todd. Online Todd.
Good evening, councils. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, I have a couple things to say. I agree
Oh,
with
sorry,
Mark.
sorry. before we
My
do this-
address is 0547 County Road 130, or AKA 547 Donegan Road. So I have a
Todd-
neat
Todd, what's your last name? Sorry, just for the paper, if they want to report on your comments.
Hurst, HURST.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Sorry.
Absolutely. So I have a couple things. I missed the earlier part on the open comments on items not on the agenda because I couldn't find the link on the city's website. Thanks to Councilor Hershey, he actually sent me the link. So thank you, Tony. I want to say that I agree with Mr. Parsons and Mr. Gould on a couple of the issues here. I think it's a great idea that the people that come to Glenwood Springs that recreate here are actually going to support our workforce housing. I like the fact that it should remain for Glenwood Springs workforce housing. I don't like the term affordable housing because in the Roaring Fork Valley, who's it affordable to? Really, we need to get rid of the word affordable and use more workforce housing for our communities in general. And why not have our guests pay for the people that serve them to help out? Now, on a previous comment, the costs where this money should go, it would be great that these funds could actually go with Habitat for Humanity and use those funds there because we're already in agreement with Habitat. We're working with Habitat, and what a great project that is. The thing that I did miss in on non-agenda items is the curb, the island off of 6 and 24 turning down to Two Rivers Park. I've noticed since that's been installed for the last month that there is no high vis paint on that. And I've noticed numerous damage to the concrete on that structure. And there's a huge oil pan leak from that. People are launching over that. So if we could maybe talk to Road and Bridge and see if we can't put some high vis on that. Also, I wanted to give kudos to Brian Smith and the Parks and Recs Department for finally getting us some bear-proof trash containers out at South Canyon Hot Springs. It would be great if we could actually get a porta potty out there as well. But I thank you, Counselor. I think you guys are doing a great job, and thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, I don't see anybody else online, so I'll bring it back to Council Chambers. I think you hung up. Anybody else from the public like to comment on the agenda item tonight? From the public? Okay, I'll bring it back now for further discussion and or a motion. Go ahead, Charlie.
I would just like to say, first of all, I'll echo the thank you to the Glenwood Community Housing Coalition for all of the work that you all have done and the many hours that you put in on this. It was approximately 7 or 8 months ago that council asked this group of stakeholders to come together, and members volunteered their time, Sumner Schachter, Clark Anderson, to help guide that group through a process. And it's a very diverse group that worked on representing the needs and to come up with ideas for affordable workforce housing. So that group is made up of residents, workers, and businesses in the community. I'm very impressed with the work that was done and what you accomplished, and that you've come to consensus on a solution to bring to council. And there was also a survey done which backs up that consensus. And so I just want to thank you for that work. I think we've gotten to where we need to be, and you guys have accomplished what council asked of you. So with this unanimous recommendation, I would certainly like to say that I would make a motion tonight that we adopt the strategic, accept the recommendation from the Glenwood Community Housing Coalition for the ballot language to be finalized over the next 2 weeks. I do have one question though, before I finalize a motion, and that's possibly for Clark or Sumner. You guys included in your recommendation a sunset of 20 years. What was that based on? And when you make a statement that you will not back up, the vote if we don't follow the recommendation, is that part of that? Because I look at 20 years and that is such a short time frame for home ownership and for actually trying to accomplish something for long-term sustainability of our housing supply within the city. So can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Oh, you want to do it? So, I mean, hello. I think that what we were trying to articulate with this is that it's a level of accountability built into it. If we can't prove this program over 20 years and show to the voters of Glenwood Springs that it's worthy, then, I think that that's something to really look at. I think the thing that we were highly committed to as a coalition was we worked really hard to arrive at a level of funding that we agreed could work, could be meaningful, had political viability, and we spent a lot of time. Not everybody agreed, but we found our way to, what do they call it? I can't remember, compromise. And it was a really great process to see the group, develop that shared understanding of what was possible and what was passable and what would work together. And that we agreed after some of the conversation at the last council meeting. We said, we're in this together. What we're willing to go for is this level, and we're going to stand together behind that. So quite honestly, we haven't had the time to discuss the 20-year sunset provision that we're recommending. It's pretty common. We think that it will probably give voters a level of assurance as well, that we're thinking about that. I know there can be, it's an interesting topic of conversation of whether you want to have something go in perpetuity. Summit County is a great example of a place that most recently their voters passed an additional tax to support their workforce affordable housing program in perpetuity. Their previous efforts at that were not in perpetuity, and they proved themselves, and they have expanded their program by doing well. And that's sort of, I think we're hoping for that level of accountability and meaningful impact. And so that's my take. I don't know if anybody else from the group wants to address that, but that's how I look at it.
Okay, thank you. No, that I had a question for that, excuse me, but so I would appreciate council's recommendations on that, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we accept the recommendation on the 2.5% lodging tax, that we spend the next couple of weeks working on the language on that. And I would hope to get a second.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Let's talk that
I'd
out.
like to talk about, I include the bullet points,
Yeah, but no, that wasn't.
including the bullet
Oh,
points that the new tax is levied on all accommodations. The funds must be for workforce housing in Glenwood Springs, and the funds cannot go to the general fund. Yes, to me, the question is the sunset 20 years again seems short to me.
Just ask
So
for your
I'd
motion.
like
Yes.
to discuss that.
Sorry.
That's
I'm
my
asking
question.
clarification.
Yeah, no, it wasn't in the original motion, so thank you for the clarification.
It just includes everything but the 20 years of the motion. Sorry,
I will include the 20 years right now, but I'd like to discuss it on the council
just
level.
make sure we know what the motion is.
Thank you.
It's been moved by Shelley, seconded by Paula. Further discussion. Ingrid.
Yeah, I would like to just make a couple comments in my support of this. And that is that referencing Monica Woolney's, what is the community saying? When I look out here, I see the community and I hear your voices. And honestly, I'm honored to reflect what you're requesting. Honored, because when I see this room, these are the people in my community who give their time and their energy. They're in occupations that qualify for almost service and volunteerism. You guys, the time commitment that so many of you have given, I completely appreciate. And once again, I'm kind of humbled by, because I know how much time away from your family it took and how much you had to be on point when you showed up those nights. So thank you for your creativity and your willingness to continue to get this to us in front of us. Regarding the idea that we can make this decision, you guys could have done this on your own without any of us. You could have walked door to door, knocked on doors and gotten signatures. And I think you probably would have been successful. This just streamlines it. It's our ability to not make you guys walk the community and spend even more time on this. And instead, it's our ability to say, yes, we hear you. You want to put this on a ballot question, and we can do that tonight. And I encourage all of you to give the community, so many times you say the community has spoken via a ballot question, but if we don't give the community an opportunity to vote, then we don't really know what the community wants to say. So I'm looking at everyone in particular. I
Excuse
am.
me.
Yeah.
Counselor Russo has the floor. Counselor Russo has the floor.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Counselor Russo.
I hope that your request for a unanimous vote is granted, and I thank you.
Thank you. You were itching too, so go ahead.
I'm not itching to, but I will happily say it.
Can you press your talk button first?
I will happily do that as well.
Thank you.
But give me 1 second. I see the father in the room, so I'm going to say, don't mistreat any foreigners who live in your land. Instead, treat them as well as you treat citizens and love them as much as you love yourself. Remember, you were once foreigners in the land of Egypt, and that is true of my people who were. And I've been attacked and yelled at about this issue. I am not anti-affordable housing, but I told, and I will tell everyone on this council, I will not vote yes for something that in the future, I'm going to write a letter to the Post Independent or guest editorial or go door to door with Mr. Parsons and campaign against. That's not fair. I don't understand this desire to this council to be unanimous all the time. I don't think that isn't democracy. And frankly, to address what Ms. Wusso said, this council has been insulated from democratic accountability. Question after question in 2019 when I ran and won, and the street tax failed. When this council or a majority, 2 people who weren't here, tried to remove me, an airport tax, the recent demos question again and again and again. I'm happy to take a poll. People raising their hand in this room, it's not an election. I think this tax could pass. I think this tax could fail. I think the timing, given what's going on in the economic situation, couldn't be worse. I hear Mr. Gould talk about workforce housing. I support workforce housing. Businesses can build workforce housing. Ken Murphy has workforce housing. The Hot Springs Pool has workforce housing. They're here tonight. Hotels have workforce housing. We can help with that. But I don't know, like Mr. Hurst said, I don't know what affordable housing is. I certainly can't afford to live in Aspen where there is affordable housing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Aspen. They don't have $1 million a year, trust me, to house 30% of their community. They have millions and millions and millions of dollars via tax and a real estate transfer tax. And they've had a program now for almost 50 years, and they haven't solved this problem. I want to ask a question, and it's rhetorical. Where else is affordable housing in this country a problem? And the answer is basically everywhere. Whether you're in Denver, whether you're in Beverly Hills, in Los Angeles, in New York, in Chicago, it's a problem everywhere. It's a problem in Vail. It's a problem in all the ski resort areas in this town and the towns nearby. It's a problem in Idaho and Ketchum, where where workers have to drive a long distance. And I just don't think I have no idea, to just echo what Mr. Parsons said. We're about to pass a tax. That's great. We're going to ask the people to pay a tax. And again, it won't be on you, because if your cousin Harry comes from Florida, he can pay the tax. What do I care? I'm not paying it. The fact that it hurts our local businesses, they'll be fine. Where is it going to go? What is this $1 million for? I will tell you what it's going to happen. I'm going to predict, and someone in the newspaper can write this down and come to me in a year if I'm wrong. What's going to happen is we're going to pay a consultant $150,000 a year, or we're going to hire an employee to do that. And that person might have an assistant. We're going to do some more studies. And then we're going to say, well, wait a minute, 2.5%, that's not enough. And they're going to come back and they're going to say, we need more money. And why don't we ask the question once for the right amount? Last meeting, I think I made a motion to make this 3.5%, and people accuse me of, well, you're just trying to trick the mayor. And then if you put it on at 3.5%, you know it's going to fail because people won't support it. But frankly, at 2.5%, it just doesn't make sense. So let me say one more thing. My mind was not made up before tonight. And you can ask Mr. Parsons, and you can ask Mr. Gould, and I'm willing to go into confession. And I promise you, my mind was not made up. There were 2 other people on this council who rallied against this tax last time. Mr. Willman convinced me that it was a bad idea last time, and now he's going to switch his vote. So people can change their minds. They can listen to the public, and maybe by November, somebody will knock on my door and change my mind. But I'm not going to support something that right now I can't support in the general election. And if I did something, I just don't think that that's fair. Just like the opposite wouldn't be fair if I voted yes, or if I voted no, and then came out in favor of it. I don't think that's fair. So I'm going to just try to be consistent. Don't take anything by it that's not unanimous. That's good. That's part of America. No, nothing's unanimous, especially in the United States today. We're a very split country. But if it passes, it passes, and I will work hard to make sure it works. And if it fails, I think we need to come up with some different solutions. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Councilor Hershey. Charlie. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Paula.
No, that's fine. Mine's short. We have a problem. I feel that I ran for city council to work on solutions to make a better community. One of the catchphrases or mottos, or one of the things that I heard in some of the presentations given to me were, if not now, when? And I believe now is the time. It's not a future discussion. It's something we need to start working on. We need affordable and workforce housing in this community.
Thank you. Charlie.
So as I said 2 weeks ago, and I'll repeat now, there is a need for workforce housing in Glenwood Springs. Mark Gould's summary of what he said, I think, hit it on the head. We've talked to Habitat and the project we're working with them on, and there's no question there's a need for this. My hesitancy of 2 weeks ago was we keep putting ballot questions before the voters. And I keep being told that I'm not listening to the voters, I'm not listening to the public. I'm making decisions in my own interest. And I don't mean nobody's pointing at me individually, but those are comments that are made about council. We are not insulated from accountability as council members. I will hopefully, and I'm fairly certain I'm going to be run for re-election next spring, and I will be accountable in that re-election bid. You can hold me accountable and determine whether you think the decisions I made over the last 4 years are in the best interest of the city, because that's what I'm trying to do. I spent a lot of time working on city matters, sometimes to the detriment of my practice, for which, as Carl Hanlon notes, I am retired, mostly retired. But I think this is very important. It's a very important issue to the city. My hesitancy of 2 weeks ago was, I don't want to take a ballot question that's going to lose. Because I think what the voters are getting is, and somebody said it here tonight, next time you'll be back asking for another tax. I'm going to be transparent. To 2025, we have a 0.5-cent city street tax that expires. If I'm on council, I'm going to be back asking that that be renewed and or repealed and reenacted, maybe at a higher rate, because the cost of building and fixing streets has gone up astronomically over the last 24 months. So I'm not going to tell you that if this goes on the ballot, it's the last time I, as a council member, if I'm sitting up here, will support that. Government is supported by the public, and the funding of our government comes from the public. Glenwood Springs has, as many communities in Colorado do, has a unique privilege of not having really high property taxes. You talk to people in New York, my daughter lives there. You talk to people in Illinois, my brother lives there. They have very, very high property taxes. We're able to keep our property taxes for residential at a fairly low rate because for operating the city, because we have the sales tax, which is paid historically 70 to 80%, depending who you talk to, by people who come to visit the city, which is appropriate because they put the demand on the city for services. They also put the demand on the city for workforce housing. We need those people serving our patrons in the restaurants. We need them working in the hotels. We need them working in the schools to make so we can educate the children of the people that are living in this community. We need them in the hospitals to serve the public and to provide for their medical needs. We need them in the city government to be able to provide for roads and streets and public. I am not thrilled with putting the ballot question on this November. But as others have said in this council before, let's let the public make that decision, not us. I have heard fairly clearly from the people here today, 2 weeks ago, and fairly consistently on the, and I haven't got the kind of emails I got on other issues, but fairly consistently in the emails I've received, that this is something that people want. So I want to give you the opportunity as a community to vote on this issue. And I'm going to vote to support putting this on the ballot. The only reason I would like to see it as being unanimous because I think it tells all of you that all 7 of us want to give you the opportunity to vote on this issue. So I would hope that it would be unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, I have one. I have
But-
one tiny one. One comment.
Hey, can I,
Oh,
if
let
I
Marco
could,
go.
yeah.
That's fine.
before we get to second chances, go ahead, Marco.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, if I may. I'm gonna keep it brief, just like Councilor Stepp, but I can't believe this is actually in front of us, and I have been waiting for this for nearly 20 years. I have started out as a P&Z commissioner a long time ago, and we have done a lot to move workforce housing forward through zoning and land use solutions. So this will, and I believe wholeheartedly in it, put a huge dent in workforce housing solutions for Glenwood Springs. I think it'll help with the crisis we're in. I think we're doing the right thing. The 2.5% is great. I was hoping for just a tad more, but this is a great start, and I will support this with whatever I can. And if, like I said before, if you need me to go run around out in town, I will. Everybody that I already know is on my side, on our side, and is in favor of this. So thank you to everyone that has worked hard. Thank you to my fellow councilors to considering this, and we're talking about this, and it looks like we're putting it on the ballot. So thank you.
Ingrid?
I wanted to reference something that Mark Gould said, and that was the average home sale price. And the average home sale price of a single family home in Glenwood since January of this year is $900,000. Let that sink in. $900,000. Glenwood is the #4 fastest growing home rate prices in the state of Colorado. #4 in the state for prices just skyrocketing. If we don't do these actions, which this is this is a baby step to solving this problem, but it is a step in the right direction. And I think that, you know, glad to hear the support that we have this evening.
Sure.
That actually kind of takes my breath away. It's not in a good way, but it's shocking. So I just wanted to speak to one question that I've heard repeated, and I believe Mr. Parsons repeated it tonight, that we don't have a plan. And I would say to that, we actually do have a plan. We have a strategic housing plan that was adopted in 2010. That was sometime during the Great Recession. So not a lot has been implemented, but part of that plan was to get the funding source in place. The idea is that we have regulations on the books. We have a housing commission that's very enthusiastic. We now have a Glenwood Community Housing Coalition that has worked on this problem. We have Habitat for Humanity. We have ideas and aspirations to solve this problem, but the reality is it's really hard to make a significant dent if we don't have some source of funding. And so acknowledging this is not as much money as, say, we would like to have, but it's a start, and it's a good start. And we can leverage with private businesses, we can leverage with other public entities to help work on this problem. So I fully support it. And I think we'll work more in the future on more details of that plan as we go forward. But actually, we awarded a contract in our consent agenda tonight to have that plan updated from 2010 to current ideas that we have going. So more to come on that, but it's there.
Thanks, Shelley. What's that?
Oh, I'm good. Well, okay, real quick. Thank you, Paul. What Charlie said about not wanting this on the ballot, I mean, I guess if it was 3-3 and I was the deciding vote, I always want to, Charlie, you know, I always want to hear from the people. I'm just concerned about putting a tax on with this timing, and you heard my other comments. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few comments. First, just some housekeeping, property taxes. Think Charlie, to your point, you mentioned Illinois and New York, which are blue states. And I don't want to get into a blue versus red, but property taxes are also very, very high in Texas and states like Iowa, which are red states. So, I think in that regard, where we don't really have, I know our property taxes seem high, but my sister has a house that's valued at about a third of mine. She pays more in property taxes. So it's got to come from somewhere is I think the point that Councilor Willman made pretty eloquently. To several other comments, this isn't enough. In fact, it's about the bare minimum. I think, Councilor Wusso said this is a baby step. I think that this is a baby step. And there's a comment from Monica Woolney that, talks about us having an agenda. And I just want to be very clear that I absolutely have an agenda. My agenda is to get as much revenue from as many sources for as long as we can to support affordable housing in this community, as much affordable housing in this community that we can stand. I'm going to look to expand on this tax in the future if possible. I'll look to have other taxes that we pass because we're going to need more revenue. This is not a, this isn't the Apple. If I thought this was the Apple, I would go ballistic, but I think there's more bites at the apple in this community's future. And I hope it's soon. I hope we can put additional asks of significant value in front of the community in the very near future. This is the number one issue in our community in poll after poll. If you look at the poll that we did in 2016 for the A&I tax and the poll we did for 2018 for the fire district, if we look at the poll we did just last June in 2021, this is the number one concern of the residents at poll after poll. So to say that we're not listening, I think is not correct. You look at just, I see our crack reporter here, Cass, in the front seat, and I'm, Carl mentioned that we've had kind of a tough time keeping reporters. I mean, our last reporter lives in a trailer, not a mobile home trailer, but lives in a camper trailer. The Post Independent publisher. Sure, somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I am certain that position is a six-figure job. And Jerry, the previous publisher, lived in Glenwood Springs. He was able to buy in, the mid-teens and bought a fixer-upper. Our previous publisher, Bryce Jacobson, lived in Newcastle, and our current publisher, Darcy, lives in Silt. I mean, that kind of tells you where these things are going. By the time my kids get ready to buy a house, well, they have only Parachute to look at. I'm not supportive of affordable housing for necessarily the publisher of the Post Independent, although I think it's not a tragedy. I think it's very disappointing that the publisher of the Glenwood Springs Post Independent cannot live in the community that they publish. And I think it's disappointing that both the chamber president and the director of the chamber have to commute into the community where they work. I mean, this is a business. This is a workforce housing. I think that somebody mentioned workforce housing versus affordable housing. I totally agree. It's a workforce housing. Our businesses are dying. I want to be doing this for my daughters. I want to be doing this for Rain and Blue. I do. I want to do this for you guys, because at some point if you want to live here, are going to need options. I think that I would just hate I'm not going to be running a campaign again. So it's pretty easy for me to do whatever heck I want. But I'd hate it to be running a campaign in 9 months and 2.5 years and 5.5 years or any other future election and have to be saddled with not even allowing the community that says this is their number one issue in poll after poll for at least the last half decade. And before then, we just didn't even ask. So I bet it was even then. I would hate to go on record as being opposed to even asking the community if they want to do this. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we got to at least ask when this is the number one issue. I think that specific to the motion, I would like to I'd like to see guidance in I don't know if it goes on the actual I guess I'm talking to you as the maker of the motion, but also to our city attorney who will be drafting this. But I would be supportive of it being Glenwood specific and not affordable community housing. And that is Glenwood Springs residents, not 81601. My rationale for that is 81601 is county, and the county, until they come to the table and at least want to be a part of the Valley Coalition of housing, and until they at least support that, then this is something that they need to come to the table. And I want the residents and the businesses that live out there.
Are you saying people who work in Glenwood in the 81601? Or are you saying people have to live in Glenwood?
I'm saying is
because
you have to
it's-
work, if it's a workforce housing issue, I'm saying is who would be eligible has to
work in that,
has
but
to-
not has to live here because they're already commuting in and want to come into the community.
Right. So wherever we build it, even if we build it outside of of city limits, for example, they would need to work for an employer
That's what
is-
I'm asking
yeah.
for clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I would also really strongly suggest that we at least table, so we can have a larger conversation, the sunset clause. When Charlie and I talked to 3 pollsters about a year ago, I think it was, for another poll that we did, that again said the housing was the number one issue. All 3 of those pollsters said that sunsets actually don't matter at the end of the day. It just is not salient. I think, we did hear this from our financial advisory board when they made a recommendation on the street tax. They said streets are always going to be around. They're always going to need to be repaired. Why would we sunset this? I feel the exact same way about this housing question. I don't think it moves the needle at all. In other communities that have done this, that have not had it, it has not proven salient. But I think it does show the community a strong vote of confidence that we really understand the issue by saying we're always affordable housing, even if you moved here in the 80s, if you moved here in the 70s, when I moved here in 2007, it was always an issue. So past performance does not indicate future returns, but I do not see a situation where this will not always be an issue. And if there is a downturn and housing becomes 20% more affordable, fantastic. That's an opportunity for us to have funding in place so that we can take advantage of that and get more housing stock. And then one thing that I did have, and maybe it's just a difference with that distinction, but funds can not go to the general fund. They must go to a separate housing fund. The only thing that concerns me a little bit about that is that there's this concept called interfund cost of service. So we have our, a certain amount of every fund that we have, utilities, landfill, enterprise funds, every fund has some portion of that that goes to the general fund to support things like finance, human resources, IT, attorneys.
I think I was gonna, Steve could maybe speak to this better than I can. I think what the group is saying is that this doesn't get dropped in without any parameters or separate accounting into the general fund.
Okay.
I think, reasonable cost of service things are pretty typical, and I have some thoughts on how to draft that when I come back to you that I just don't like, they aren't fully formed, so I don't want to rattle them off. But I think I understand what the group is asking for in terms of accountability, and I think that's the important thing.
Okay. So with that, I will be supporting this, and I'll support the motion as it stands, but I will strongly support a conversation comes back to us to look at and to do some research on that sunset clause. I think that's something that deserves a little bit more discussion.
Distinction without a difference, not difference without a distinction.
What's the difference?
No, the phrase.
I'm sorry, I don't get the distinction.
The distinction, but the difference.
Ryan, let's call the question.
Hold on. You haven't amended, are you just saying like things that you would like? That was your wish list?
Basically, the
Okay.
sunset is I'm willing to support the motion as it stands. I would like for us to strongly consider before we refer it. So you can draft up the language however, Carl, but once it gets to us, I'd like to have a conversation and to, maybe talk, we have a pollster. I'd like to talk to him and, other pollsters to see if that is something that we really think needs to happen to move the needle significantly.
So I just have objection to the only within city limits and not. like, the
It was an
entire-
amendment.
Okay, great. We
I'm
can
making no amendments.
We
at this
can, we
point.
can battle about that later.
Yes,
Okay,
I am
great.
supporting the
Okay,
motion
cool.
as stated.
Okay.
Ingrid, that's gonna be the ordinance.
Okay.
Ryan, let's call the question.
Counselor Wusso,
Yes.
Counselor Stepp, Counselor Dem,
Yes.
Mayor Godus,
Yes.
Counselor Kaut,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Yes.
Counselor Hershey.
No.
It passes 6-1.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Mayor,
Two. Yeah.
When we wait for them to leave.
Yeah, we'll come back at 7:42.
Mm.
All right. Already 8 o'clock when you have to do the bath.
Counselor Dan, who I think gave up at 3 AM.
Okay.
Oh, good.
So just let the
Work ethic, I want to tell you.
let the record reflect that Counselor Dem has left our virtual environment of city council.
I put it in the minutes that he left at 8 o'clock.
Wonderful.
Oh, time.
Not switch.
Urban forestry and beetle kill.
Ryan's changed, his appearance has really changed a lot.
Is Ryan on vacation?
He is. Our hair is close. He's trying to catch up with me, so.
It's close.
I'll just get us connected here.
So Dan, you have that Steve Martin kind of hair that turned a light color in early age. You certainly look very young.
Yeah, 18,
18. Oh, wow.
but it's definitely hereditary.
Yeah.
There we go.
So you're saying you're 19, 20?
Yeah, exactly.
Look at the shoes.
Yeah.
They're very hip.
Offset the hair. Thank you very much for having us. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce, this is Heather Listman. Heather's been with us since March, and she's our new downtown parks and public spaces supervisor. Is also, as of June, our certified arborist, and as you know, per code, that we're required to have a certified arborist on staff. And she has motivated Matt Urmson as well to complete his application, and will be testing at the end of this month. So we'll actually have 2 certified arborists, which will be fantastic. Because, and we'll jump right into it. Your council packets, there's a lot of information that we shared with you. And we know that unsure, how much time we'd have tonight and how late we'd be on. So we were going to try to keep this as quick and to the point as possible. So we, as the Parks Department, are responsible for the maintenance of trees within our public lands, open spaces, parks, and some right-of-ways. So for a whole lot of reasons we have a lot of love for trees. And just a quick, the bullet points are cleaner water, removable air pollution, wildlife habitat, especially is incredibly important here in our wildland urban interface. It helps decrease the temperature and the effects of urban heat island, and also increases property value. So we, with my glasses, or just catching up. We as a staff, and we've only, just started my second year as the park superintendent. Heather's been here since May. Matt started last year, and Chad just started in April. So we are quickly trying to get up to speed on what we have in our tree inventory. And unfortunately, we've noticed a lot of both good things and also some areas that we are struggling as a city to maintain our urban canopy. For maintenance, from some for lack of care, and also a bit of lack of future planning for tree plantings. So we're trying to wrap our heads around all that. We do have a very aging tree canopy. I think one of my favorite photos of trees in the city are the trees that used to line Grand Avenue. Unfortunately, when those were all removed for the expansion of Grand, it was a pretty impressive way to enter our city. So, so our current status is that, we as a department, we don't have a forestry department. We have, like I said, 1 certified arborist and staff now that are getting up to speed so we can maintain our urban canopy to a much higher level. A really big reminder is that all trees within the right-of-way are the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. And that's been in code now for a while now. And we're trying to figure out how we can best navigate that and to assist our citizens as well too, to navigate that too. And in a little while here, Heather's going to share some ideas that we have of how we can help out with that process, because since that code change has happened, as most of you probably know, tree care is incredibly expensive. Tree removal is incredibly expensive. So what has happened is we've seen a lot of neglect or lack of care So issues have started to compound on themselves. But despite all that, we have a incredible urban canopy here. So what we've started to do, and this goes back to in 1997, the city hired Colorado State Forest Service to come in and complete an inventory of our urban canopy. Unfortunately, that just included the right-of-way trees, basically in the downtown core. Didn't include any of the trees in the parks at all. So we're trying to catch up in that area. And I think this, other than the words, the chart will show it better, is that in 1997, only 51.5% of our trees were of good health in 97. Fast forward to 2022, like I said, our issues have kind of compounded on themselves. The other thing that goes along with that as well is that you see 16.8% of our trees in 97 were ash trees. Probably have heard of the emerald ash borer that is now, I believe, as far west as Thornton. And I think that was just confirmed a couple weeks ago, and we know it's moving west. 16.4% of our trees are elm. We know that the elm beetle is in Rifle and moving east. And then our maple trees, 17%, we're starting to see are really struggling as of late. And then a lot of these things are happening quickly. Lack of water, increased temperatures, and a building out of our urban environment. So the last thing along this line is that we started to notice just before Heather started this, Matt and I were hoping that a number of our pine trees were suffering either from lack of water or because of our late frost from frostnip. What we quickly realized, though, is as spring came along and Heather started, that wasn't the case. So we quickly hired Earthwise Horticulture to come in and inventory all of our trees in our parks, including Glenwood Cemetery. And I point out Glenwood because you may have noticed an increase in browning in dead trees. So what we realize is that, I'm trying to remember the total number of infestations in parks, 80% of our parks?
It's, yeah.
Roughly 80% of our parks are infected with pinyon ips beetle. And those ips beetles have moved out of the pinyon trees into other pine species. We had 3 trees removed in Two Rivers Park the first part of June. Austrian pines that what we're realizing is it's spread quickly. Mount Soper's Drive next to Sullivan Park, you'll see 2 pine trees that over the past few months went from kind of green to completely dead. So where we're at right now is trying to quickly grasp the situation, how we can best manage it. Our Glenwood Cemetery issue is that, so along with that, Earthwise gave us a quote, and the total quote for a single treatment was 18,000 for a single treatment. So our problem is 18,000 for a single treatment. In Glenwood Cemetery, we don't have water to water trees. So treating those trees is, we're trying to, treat an island in a sea of issues. And this is not just, isolated to Glenwood Springs. The American West as a whole is struggling with the pinyon ips beetle. Up and down the valley, Newcastle to Basalt right now, they're seeing this beetle infestation. So what we've quickly decided is that we were going to save the trees that we can have the most impact on. Our concern is Axtell Park. I hate to lose those trees. In our parks that are in danger of losing, we're going to focus on those areas first. So that's where we're at with the ips beetle. We are working with Colorado State Forest Service, the BLM office out of Grand Junction, because they're dealing with this issue, although more in a wildland settings, just to see what other municipalities and agencies are doing. So, and then the last thing along the beetle issue is that we know now that it's confirmed that the Rocky Mountain pine beetle is in 3 Mile. Our concern is it will cross over into South Canyon. And how do we start to mitigate those issues? And I know for Gary and I, we're having those conversations with what's the best way to approach this. So that being said, that's, I guess, it for the gloom and doom. And Heather has more positive news of how we would like to move forward as a department, and as a city, and what's the best way to approach all this.
So in here, I've got a few statistics regarding municipal urban forestry. It's a lot to read through, so feel free to take your time later and read through it all. It's was a report done in 2016, a national report for municipalities. And a lot of the statistics that I have in here are for municipalities around our size. So this kind of will give you a good idea of where we're at compared to other municipalities. Some things that we can get started on for just as far as maintaining a thriving urban forest and kind of expanding on the diversity of our canopy, protecting it with sustainable practices and using kind of a little bit better planning and management programs. Would be one, starting with the Urban Forestry Assistance Grant Program. This is something that we've been kind of looking at for the past 2 months or so, that I've been fielding a lot of phone calls about right-of-way trees. There's a lot of really concerned homeowners that say, hey, who does this tree belong to? I didn't plant this, you know, who's going to take care of it? Who's going to pay the $10,000 fee to get this removed? And then with the Ips beetle coming in, we've got people concerned that want to be able to treat it and want somebody to come out and look at it. So this grant program, I based it around other programs and other municipalities about our size. It's not a ton to get started with, but it is something to help people out. And especially because we're going to just see such an issue here, and the beetles, it's just going to continue to spread. And if people don't have assistance with it, it'll probably just go untreated and get compound. Some other things that we can do for planning is actually do a full updated inventory, which is something we really, really need. Our inventory is 25 years old, and doing it ourselves with the few staff that we have is almost impossible. So we really need a team to come in and help us get it done, and then actually have an active program for monitoring, updating, and keeping track of this, which is something I've also been working on the side. So I do have a plan in place for continuing maintenance of it. And if we're able to utilize things like the tree plotter canopy or tree plotter inventory, we can see how our canopy has changed over time, where we're losing our canopy coverage. We can see what communities it's affecting. We can see where our heat islands are. We can see the monetary value that our urban forest is providing us, which means that it's also going to be easier for us to apply for state grant funding as well. So I'm hoping to kind of show how important this small step is in order to kind of be able to plan for the future and be able to afford actually what's coming at us. That's about it.
And I think, for us, we, at this point, we've left our line item in A&I, that $50,000 for trees as it is, looking for some direction from Parks and Rec Commission of what they would like to see us to do, and for you all as well too. We're not coming to ask, just open hands. We want to illustrate where we're at and where we're headed and how we'd like to approach some of this. So.
Questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, I read through some of this, but I saw little increments, so we could charge this, $1,000 and a cap, et cetera, but there was no kind of defined, here's how much we want to do each year. There was nothing on what would it cost to do a full inventory, and what's this program and what does it cost? I mean, can you, number one, obviously work with the Parks and Rec Commission on presenting that, but come back with those kind of figures so we really know what money we're looking at?
Absolutely. I do actually have a budget put together. I just didn't want to put it in here.
Okay, it helps us a lot, kind of like, do we want to even go here? Because at least for me, I like to see what things cost. And then the other question is, you talked about setting this program up and then being able to go get grants. There's so many grants out there right now just to initiate these type of programs. So are you researching that now to say, we want to put a grant program together and we'll match it 50% or something along that line?
Absolutely. Yes, we are. And We were approved for one grant in Colorado Tree Coalition already, just in the past couple months. So.
Okay, well, if we could see all those kind of numbers, that'd really help out. But definitely, I'm glad you're going to Parks and Rec Commission first. That's nice.
Tony?
Whoops. Where am I? Yeah.
Yes, it's hot.
Hi, sorry, I'm not an arborist and I'm not a entomologist and I thought about this. I know this is a big issue everywhere. But like if I live across the street, say from Axtell Park and or next to Axtell Park and my trees are infected and you guys correct the problem or remove trees in the park, isn't that a waste if you're not doing something with the neighbors of the park, or if one neighbor does something, one neighbor doesn't?
So yeah, something that we have done is we've started a public education campaign. So what we did recently was start a public education campaign. And we actually sent out flyers in everybody's water bill that talk about the Ips beetle, explain what it is, how to identify it. And we have our contact info on there to report sightings. Unfortunately, once a tree is infested, there's not a whole lot you can do to save it. But fortunately, there are preventative things that we can do. So yes, even if someone isn't treating their tree, it's very unfortunate. But what we can do is we can do preventative sprays or basal trunk injections, and we can protect those specimen trees.
But it's correct, like the beetle doesn't know he's at a public park or if he's at my house. I mean, they do spread, that's how it spreads, right? From tree to tree of the same species or to different similar species.
Well, if you treat a tree, the likelihood of it spreading to that tree is very minimal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think just along with that, one additional thing, sorry, is that, in parks, this year we've started, a really strong effort to decrease our water consumption in parks. And what do we need to do to change our turf types or whatever else? Some of the issues are, though, is for the Ips beetle in particular, is that water actually helps combat the infestation of them, because a solid, healthy tree with a lot of water that is able to push sap out of the holes, that's what's saving the tree. But so we're trying to balance all that as well. So how do we reduce our water, but then the trees? So.
Thank you.
Don't care. Pick. Oh, then Ingrid.
I recently read this book. It was the Overstory, and it's all about trees. If you haven't read it, you should read it. And the one that was most captivating was the chestnut, where at one point we had like 4 billion in the country, the tallest, strongest trees, and now they're gone. They're down to just like shrubs that grow from the roots. If we don't do anything, where will we be in 5 years with the Ips beetle in particular?
I think it's definitely safe to say that we could lose at least half of our canopy. And that really just depends on environmental conditions. So it depends on where we're going with how long our winters are and how hot our summers are and how much rain we're getting. But this year, we had more rain this year than we've had in 20 years, which is amazing. But will that happen again next year? Or are we going to go right back to drought conditions? And if that's the case, we may lose most of our pine and spruce canopy.
So, and one thing that we've done then to help with that as well then is to look at non-native species. The Kentucky coffee tree has done really well in Denver and hotter, drier climates. It's a large stature tree that seems to be doing well. So, we have planted 120 saplings from the New Mexico State Forest Service. So they're coming from a hotter, drier climate. To give that a shot to maybe they will do better. I mean, granted, these are saplings, so it's going to take quite a bit of time. Ponderosa pine, Doug fir, some junipers.
Rocky Mountains.
That are susceptible or that are resistant?
That we're hoping are resistant to heat and dryness. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of those actually you can see, you'll see out of the Cardiff Schoolhouse, they're still caged, but those are some of the areas that we have planted and then trying to establish them. So.
And also I'm hoping personally that the beetles will have moved on by the time these trees are mature enough for that to be a problem. The Ips beetle doesn't infect trees that are below a couple of inches in diameter. So they're attacking all of our most mature trees, which is unfortunate. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to plant trees. It just means that we should make sure that we're not doing monocultures of all spruce, all pine, all elm, all maple, and diversifying our canopy as much as we possibly can.
Sure.
Okay, well, I'm really glad to hear about the diversifying and bringing in trees from, maybe a warmer climate as they move forward. Have you looked at there's one called the Texas Red Oak? Something, yeah.
The red oak,
that one?
yeah, it does very well here.
Okay, so anyway, I had a couple questions because we've been watching on the hillside. If you walk up to the Glenwood Cemetery, there are a lot of the beautiful pinions up there, the larger ones. Is there any way to try to remove those, or do you actually spread it more if you try to remove some of those? Just thinking of that some of the neighborhood is concerned about fire danger up there and things like that.
One of the most important educational components concerning removal of these trees is that they shouldn't be removed unless you're able to dispose of the wood immediately and properly. It needs to be either immediately chipped or solarized, which is a whole process that most people don't have the time for. But as far as removing them from that Glenwood slope, if we do, what we're going to be doing is causing a lot of erosion issues. So if and when we're faced with that, we're going to look at planting other native species immediately to address that issue. But I personally don't think that it's a top priority to remove the ones that are there right now until we've addressed other more important areas
within the canopy in town.
Yeah, and particularly trees that are a serious hazard to pedestrians is what I'm most concerned with.
Right.
The ones that are on that slope are probably not going to fall on someone. So.
Okay.
And I think that's definitely been part of our discussion with Doug. Fire department is when we start to remove those, how do we do that?
Okay.
Most importantly is to leave the stump and root structure in the ground so it holds the soils back until we can get some native either trees or grass species back in there to hold those slopes together.
Okay. And I do share your concerns with, as we try to reduce water and we see the drought prolong, that it's okay to change out the grass and things like that, but then how does it affect the shrubs and the trees? So just wondering if there's anything, since we're working on new stormwater management, are there things we can do? Because when we get a big rain in town, most of that water flows down our streets and our concrete areas into
Carl,
the river.
Isn't it illegal to collect water in Colorado?
But I mean, to let it to give more opportunity to have.
They changed that.
Places
Yeah,
where you
there's
have it go
there's a
into
rain
the soil.
barrel, it's individual home rain barrel
Exception.
exception.
There's that.
Right.
But I'm talking just.
Large scale diversion of natural flows require a change in water.
Okay, yeah.
And I guess I would say, are the streets natural flows? I mean, is it out of the question to create less concrete in town and more opportunity for the water to soak?
I think that I should probably push my button. I think one of the areas increasingly that has been looked at over the last 15 years is a reduction in impervious surfaces in urban planning.
Right.
Obviously from both the standpoint of soil moisture content, as well as, kind of reducing, we create hardscapes that increase temperatures.
Exactly.
And then we plant canopies to try to reduce the temperatures that we just increased.
Yes.
So there's definitely been a move there. And I think there are, we still struggle with the kinds of products that we need with the kind of durability to address that. But I'm sure it's something like Paula is working on with Middle Watershed as well, like those ideas. But absolutely, there's definitely an opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, and actually there is. So in October is going to be our big tree planting month. So we've been working with Ryan Johnson to plant trees within that retention basin at 4 Mile Roundabout, just to the north side of that.
Great.
And then through, Terry's project for Airport Road, that is close to 1.5 linear feet of biospheric.
Right, and that's more of a, not a pipe to take it away, but more of a, I can't think of the word right now, but yeah.
Infiltration, yeah, we will infiltrate most of the water from South Ridge project.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, okay, and that's the type of thing that I'm talking about, wherever we can, because, you know, I have seen, we used to have a lot of English walnuts in town, and most of those are either dead or half dead. So it's, you know, it's sad to see the trees kind of transition, but I totally agree with diversifying the species and then do you guys have sustainable strategies? I assume they work with you on grants, going after grants as our grant consultant for the city.
Yeah, so that's what we started that process
Okay.
now, looking at what's available outside. We were, you know, thankful to get this Colorado Tree Coalition grant, but it's just a start that, you know, that we're gonna start looking at those bigger grants to attack some of these.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
I would say especially with like the erosion because of climate change. I think those are where you're really seeing a lot of the grant opportunities.
So I see here in the Urban Forestry Assistance Program, the grant is up to $1,500 match. So my concern is, I mean, it's really expensive to take down, like, I'm gonna say $10,000, like a very large tree. Is that like crazy high? Okay,
No, I think as soon as a crane comes out, 10,000 is not.
that's kind of what I've heard. It always sounds crazy to me, so I never really believe that, but I'm glad you're supporting that. So what happens if somebody takes, you know, just kind of the way it's written up, if somebody takes a $1,500 or commits to either option A or option B, and has somebody come out, walk me through that, because if I'm on the hook and I want to do the right thing, but I don't got 10 grand, 1,500 doesn't, I probably don't have 8,500 either. So how would that work?
So this is kind of, this is a low average number that I picked based on other programs. And the cost of removal is just one of the costs that a homeowner is gonna need assistance with. So maybe they just need a very old tree prune, which, I mean, just getting that old tree prune can help prolong its life so significantly that $1,500 could go a long way in that circumstance. Now, if they're removing a tree that's 150 inches in diameter and it's gonna be $8,000, it's, you know, it doesn't have the same impact at that point, but it's better than nothing, which is
Right.
what we're offering.
Okay.
And really, we, you know, thought that this is a great start, that, you know, that Grand Junction has a great forestry program. And they have a very large budget that they work on, and an entire staff, but I think for us, this is a good step.
Well, and I guess my concern was, you know, following the assessment, qualifying applicants must agree to and remit payment for the portion of immediate tree removal. So if somebody says, come out for an assessment, we make the assessment. What happens if they can't afford to remove that tree? They have to immediately agree to remove the tree and they don't have 8,500. How does that work?
Or prove it.
Right, but if the assessment calls for it to be removed,
I mean,
are we gonna lien their house?
so
I mean,
the way that I would do the program would be with maybe you're reading the original document, maybe that we
and maybe
sent
it's
out.
the must agree part, or I don't know. I mean, I think some language that allows there to be a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that having a little flexibility there is fine. I think that really what we need to do is just provide this as an option to people if they are willing to invest in taking care of their tree. So I think if we come out and we do the assessment, all we're saying is that if we're willing to give you this grant funding, then you have to follow through.
Okay, and so that clears it up. If we give them a check, they have to follow through on it, not just the assessment.
Jonathan, they're not looking for an action tonight.
No, I
This is a
understand.
draft, right? And has it been vetted? Has the draft of this grant program gone through Planning and Zoning Commission yet, or Parks and Rec
No,
Commission?
this is just a
Okay, it's a
very-
preliminary.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, yeah, the Parks and Rec Commission has seen the upscale presentations.
I just, DDA, for instance, they do like a reimbursement on a facade grant. So I think I look at reimbursement rather than giving the money and hope you got to follow through. So we might find.
Any other questions? Guys, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you for looking into this. Our
And Heather, there's still, those sliders are still there. so.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, glad,
Yes.
glad to have arborists on
Because you look
on
at-
staff.
And I think we would love to see the grant program come back to us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you've been with the city how long, Heather?
Since March.
March. Welcome. We don't get to meet new employees a whole lot, so I hope everything's going well.
Very happy to be here.
Great. All right. Council comments. Good.
Riverfest, August 13th, I'd really suggest like a nice core city of Glenwood team out there picking up stuff on our riverbanks and then joining us at the park at noon for food and raffle prizes and
Beverages,
music.
August
What?
13th.
beverages.
Beverages, yes, but man, a good solid team out there picking up trash. Unfortunately, I have to work because I'm on the River Commission, but I know the other 6 of you could rally and be
I
out
go-
there.
I go
doing
there every
some
year.
stuff. All right, well, sign up. They're looking for signups now.
Weird timing there.
So that was one, and it could be staff too, Steve. So I just want you to know it's a good time to get out, get a little exercise, but
Paula, can I add there will be alcohol?
there will be alcohol. Yes, we do have that. Beer will be there.
And music, right?
Music,
Good. mix.
stray grass, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't leftover salmon. We keep trying every year, but.
Leftover salmon.
It's a band.
Oh.
Yes, leftovers. I also, a couple of council meetings ago, people have referenced the picnic tables that used to be on 7th Street across from the parking lot where the sewage treatment plant used to be, and those got removed. I didn't know if that was temporary, but I just wondered if we could do something about, I still would love to kind of activate that area and make it pleasant to be down and park your car and feel. So I just wondered if we can get those picnic tables back. Oh, you're ready to tell me.
Yeah, we're getting materials to,
Okay,
rebuild them.
great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. That was it. My
Okay.
stuff is fun.
Darn, that is fun.
Yes, sir.
oh. Ing-
He's first.
Is he? Okay, sorry. Charlie.
Okay.
Well, I know the citizen who spoke earlier about VIP, that's my trash company. I haven't received a notice yet. But I told the council that this was my concern. They got driven out of business in Carbondale. And when you start to threaten them with this plan, and if Charlie's correct and told her that, this isn't for sure yet, but my concern is, less companies competing means the prices go up. And I switched from Waste Management because VIP service was better and it was cheaper. But I just want you all to keep that in mind as you move forward and create a monopoly, that's going to have its own set of problems even before we do it. And that's what happened in Carbondale, and that's what could happen here. Thank you.
A couple of things. Just I think for the public record, we were going to discuss an ordinance in which we define kitchenettes for part of the hotel conversion. And Carl mentioned to me, and I just want to get the record. Carl, do you want to handle it?
Yeah, sure. So we had, because of the timing of the 2-week cycle, we couldn't get that noticed quickly enough. And because, as you know, the paper only publishes it's not an everyday publication like it used to be. So that will be on, where'd Jen go? On the 18th. Jenna's occupying Steve's old seat where I can't. Yeah, you do.
You can have it back someday.
Will that also have parking plan?
I believe, yeah.
Okay, the other thing, and I told Jonathan and Carl this in our agenda meeting last week, I was appointed to the Budget and Management Committee of the CMO Board of Directors, which is the executive committee and the leadership track. So again, assuming I get reelected, I'm moving toward the leadership position, the CMO board. So
Congrats.
Ingrid.
This is a follow-up on a conversation I had with Chief Tilson earlier this evening, and it was about how awesome the guys in Fleet are. I think so often we forget that, or maybe we remember, but maybe they need more notoriety, is that, the fleet services here, they take such good care of all the vehicles, but in particular, our emergency vehicles. So it's not just our emergency, the individuals who get to the emergency, but also the vehicle that gets there safely. And Chief mentioned that, what was it? You said last night they stayed late?
Yes, Dusty and Bonnie both stayed
Mhm.
until after 6 o'clock, helping transfer equipment from one broken down engine to put another one in service, so. They
So-
go above and beyond already.
So a little shout out to those guys. Well deserved.
Anybody else? I'll just say real quick, I mean, Tony, to your response to, I think Cheryl Kane's, so it's not to you specifically, it's to Cheryl Kane, I guess. You just brought it. Yeah, and so, I mean, VIP pulled out of our neighborhood and it's because the owner had a heart attack. And it is such a small operation that I don't know if even talking about franchise trash collection gave him the heart attack, but I don't think that conversation probably had, what is literally a 5-person operation. And because of that, there's a lot of reduced capacity. I mean, I discontinued service with them because I was getting horrible service. I couldn't call to make payments. Just no one was ever there. The police actually were called out to my neighborhood because there is huge hydraulic stains everywhere that was getting washed down into the storm sewer. So sometimes a company that's not great, that has good leadership or good equipment, who's undercapitalized, sometimes they just go out of business. Sometimes it has nothing to do with a policy we're talking about that might hypothetically be implemented in a year. So I'm not, I just want to make sure that that is not, sure. That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything else? Yes. Then for our public comment, does anybody have anything? Nope. Okay. Attorney comments?
Nothing specific, just for the public's benefit. We continue to, we had a 2-hour executive session working through the candidates for city manager. That process continues to move forward. I think the goal of council is to find a great new city manager for the city and make Steve not sit next to me.
I think we should slow down the process.
Anyway, so that in all seriousness, thank you guys for this afternoon. It's tough work. You guys did, you ran through it and yeah, it was a hugely productive session and I genuinely appreciate that. I know we have some ingoing and outgoing mail, in particular, the letter of support on the RAISE grant that I think RAFTA reached out about and Terry just stopped by to remind me not to forget. So I know that's important. If you guys are good with that, we'd like to get that out the door with the signature and the support of council. So I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if you would like to.
I'll make a motion. We all knows what the RAISE grant is. If anybody doesn't know, we're doing a RAISE grant primarily for that, to bridge that $6 million gap that we have unfunded on the 27th Street underpass. Also for the West Glenwood Transportation Hub, which really consolidates RAFTA in to the larger statewide system, connecting it anyway. The letter's in the thing. You probably know what it is. I'm going to speak myself. So I'll move to, does somebody want to make a motion to adopt and to send?
I will make a motion to move and accept that letter of correspondence.
Okay, it's been moved by Ingrid, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Also in ingoing and outgoing correspondence, we have a very lovely letter from the Middle Colorado Watershed Council. It says, well, we don't need to read it. It's very nice. It's in the thing. It's very short and sweet, but it is sweet. And it is signed from Paula Stepp. Is it how you pronounce that? Steve, Papa.
Doesn't she have to leave the meeting?
I thought it was only one P. She's the executive director of the MCWC, and then Morgan Hill, who is the board of director president. So thank you for that.
And a shout out to Ryan for also emailing all those correspondences to us. Thank you. So we didn't miss them.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We also have a nice handwritten note for our support of the 125th Annual Strawberry Days from Angie and two other, Sarah and and Tara. There we go. Angie, Sarah, and Tara. So that is all the incoming and outgoing correspondence. Carl, do you have anything else? I'm sorry, I kind of.
No, I think that's it. We're probably gonna have, my aversion to executive sessions, but we're probably gonna have the next few meetings on working through the city manager stuff. We're probably going to be doing those, probably similar timing, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, ahead of the regular meeting. I know it makes for a tough evening. We'll try to mitigate sort of how long your evening agenda is so you can focus on that, but it's like one of those, huge decisions for the city. So I like you to have the time and have you fresh.
And just, I guess as a point of order, point of process, that if we have, I think, keeping that as much as we can in our normal work council kind of schedule would be great. But I also know we're in budget season, Stephen Yvette. So if there's things that we're not getting to, just be prepared. We might have a special, I hope it's a special session, but if I'd rather do the special session related to budget because we can all read budget documents and catch up, and we'll have 2 cracks at it to ask questions from the dais, whereas as city manager search is pretty time specific. So I guess I would just encourage us to be open and flexible to a or several special sessions to get through the budget part, because we still have to do that in normal business as well. Anything else? All right. Yeah. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any